what happened behind the scenes, but clearly the Queen gave him an ultimatum. He has to stand down. Now, he may have reached that conclusion himself, but with Prince Charles involved too, he's in New Zealand, there was no... I think this was inevitable. He was going to have to step down. My suspicion is that's it. He's not going to come back. They're talking about for the foreseeable future, but he's 60 next year. The Epstein thing could drag on in the courts 4 years, so they can't really risk him coming back into public life until that's resolved, and that could take for such a long time.
Who really wants the friend of a paedophile visiting their town, their school, ballet, any company? You don't. I think he's just tarnished, and that's it. He can't change it. That interview was utterly disastrous. He had his moments. He could have expressed sympathy for the victims. He didn't. He could have said he wished he'd never come across Epstein. I didn't know anything initially. I just wish I'd never met him. He didn't, and that's it. And he is very arrogant. So I suspect he has had to be pushed. I can't see how he'd take this decision himself.
The other thing, they had to ensure that the Queen wasn't damaged in all of this, because that is the monarchy, the institutional monarchy. Prince Charles as well. They're thinking about going forward, and he is very close to his mother. And when Prince Philip stood down, because he's a very old man and he wanted to withdraw from public life, we wrote the story that the Queen had asked Prince Andrew to step into the breach and deputise for Prince Philip. That's how close they are.
Though, Anna, if he's doing no royal duties for the foreseeable future, why does he continue to get £250,000 of taxpayers' money through his mother from the Sovereign's grant and a place over the road there in Buckingham Palace? Anyone else who can't do their job would be out on their ear and wouldn't be paid, and certainly wouldn't have a tied cottage or palace in this case.
The band Old Duke of York, you quite like that headline from the Metro,
great
don't you?
headline.
I mean, you know, the Sun also tried a pun, but that one kind of works.
I think the Sun one doesn't quite work, Prince Andy. I see what they've tried. It'll soon be dropped. But the band Old Duke of York, because he is banned if his mother and his elder brother, the Queen and Prince Charles, have ganged up on him.
And Prince Charles has wanted a slimmed-down monarchy for a very long time, so you very rarely see Prince Andrew et al. On the balcony now at Buckingham Palace. This will play into his hands now. Slimmed-down monarchy. When Prince Charles is king, it will be Charles and Camilla, it will be William and Kate, Harry and Meghan, and that's of course if Harry and Meghan want to carry on doing royal duties.
Yeah, there's the Sun, Prince Andy. You talk about that he will still appear at royal occasions, so he's not disappeared for good, certainly. But how much of the difficulties that we're seeing now is because he was second in line to the throne for 22 years. We saw it with Princess Margaret. Anyone watching The Crown will be watching this unveil itself.
It's difficult, and we're seeing problems even with Harry, actually.
Yeah, the spare
he's the spare to the heir.
Yes.
And he knows that William is going to be king, and they're always trying to find a role for themselves. I think if Prince Andrew had stayed in the Navy, he had a distinguished career in the Navy, he was in the Falklands War, maybe none of this would have happened.
I think the problem is more fundamental in it is the whole hereditary principle, and you don't know where the gene pool's going to go and who you're going to get and what you're going to get, and they've got a Rumman, a Baden there. So why does he have to be part of the firm, the family, the show? He didn't. And of course, it's a much broken dynasty over the centuries. It used to be warlords at one time. Okay, now they're constitutional and they just legitimise unearned power and excessive wealth. But the problem you have, if you're going to bring them all along, you're going to get some who just don't fit very well.
Well, I mean, you come from a Republican perspective on this.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
There are many supporters of the royal family out here, and you might argue because his role was as a trader, he did meet with people who had money, basically, that were world leaders.
And he had,
But
he had done a good job at it for many years, but that went wrong in the end too.
Well,
but he had done a good job.
Your paper's always been slightly sceptical about that, has it not?
Yeah. But I mean, I remember when I was on the Telegraph, I went out to Singapore with him when he was trade ambassador, and he could open doors that I would argue politicians couldn't. That's what royalty does. It's very powerful to say you are the son of the Queen. There's only one Queen in the world. It's not the Queen of the Netherlands or Belgium. It's this Queen here.
Stories in Whitehall, and I've heard them from people who used to work with him. He was very demanding, not to say rude. He'd always want to take his golf clubs. He always wanted his downtime.
He took his ironing board.
He used to disappear.
Spent half the time away. Still got to have downtime when you're
but
working.
it was why he was Air Miles Andy. Look, he was privileged and entitled.
Lost to Mr. Trump.
Yeah, and hey, look, he's no loss to them. He was dragging them down. If you were the Queen and you want to keep that monarchy going,
let's take you to the inside pages of the Mail. Then summoned by the Queen and Charles to the palace and told that it's over. This was really about protecting the integrity and the reputation of the royal family.
Absolutely right. We want the monarchy, well I do, to go on and on for decades to come. He was damaging it, and it was causing serious damage. And the monarchy exists because of the continued goodwill of the people.
Consent.
And this was uniting people. There was, I mean, that poll on Sky was extraordinary. Only 6% of people who watched the interview thought he was telling the truth. That was devastating.
Yeah, and look, they've had flings, they've had affairs, divorces, separations, broken up. People forgive that and understand it.
That's what ordinary people do.
But this is involving a convicted paedophile who he said he was so, after the guy had been convicted, he was so honourable, said Andrew, I had to go out and stay with him for 4 days to tell him I couldn't see you anymore. It just didn't seem to wash. And a lot of his little explanations, like I couldn't sweat, so the claims I was from Virginia, that I was sweating dancing with her in a nightclub, and then she was forced to have sex with me, can't be true. And it's easy to find pictures of him sweating. He always used to go out in a suit and tie. Well, it was easy to find pictures of him out without a suit and tie. And if you don't believe the little things, why believe the big things? And the statement he issued today, well, you could see it being prepared for him because it was completely different to his interview and expressing sympathy for the women, saying he wished he'd had nothing to do with Epstein, and also he's now very willing to help the police. So, what is he going to be on a plane over to the States?
It corrected some of the errors that people had pointed out. But this article in the Mail talking about how Prince Charles has been very much involved, despite the fact that he's on a tour at the moment in New Zealand, would have been on the phone, this article says, to his mother to decide what happened.
New Zealand is part of the realm, and this will be a huge story in New Zealand, and Charles and Camilla will have been probably, the reverberations felt all the way throughout their tour, and if it's massive there, it's worldwide, this story.
Well, the front page of the Mail calls him an outcast.
I mean, very dramatic.
Whether that is the same behind these doors, one wonders. And the Mirror as well. I'm sorry, Mummy, I took that literally. You say this is
It's mocking him.
Mocking him,
absolutely mocking him. Look, the Mirror is a royalist paper, as is the Mail is. In fact, I think all the papers are royalist, apart from the Guardian, which declares itself a Republican paper. But on something like this, you can just see there's public revulsion, and the public's turned against him, and you understand why.
It's
because
extraordinary.
there are terrible offences in the States. Women being groomed and trafficked and raped.
When this story
and then
first...
he's just sort of, well, I didn't know anything. Actually, my good friend was up to. I didn't really know my good friend.
Hang on, to move on from that, when this story first broke, we all thought, what can you do with the royal? A politician, you can fire a politician, or a politician can resign. That's what's happened now to a member of the royal family, and that hasn't happened
before. So you say he's effectively been sacked by the Queen?
Effectively.
What's the last? Edward VIII, I suppose. Edward VIII, the abdication.
Well, that was for love. That's because he fell in love with Wallis Simpson. This isn't about love, is it?
No, he's been forced out because it's tawdry.
Yeah, but that was probably still a bigger crisis.
Much bigger. The monarchy was teetering on the edge.
Yeah.
This monarchy will weather this. Do you know why I think this is going to be okay for the monarchy? Because the principal players in the royal family, that's the Queen, William and Kate, Prince Charles and Camilla, they're not involved in any controversy. They're getting on with their job, and they're doing it pretty well.
The application was, what, 1936? You could hide a lot then, and information could be concealed. You can't now in this era, and the full exposure is just wilting. But what made him give that interview? Well, he clearly is more arrogant than we thought. He's also stupider than we feared.
How much room will she have in her house for all the awards she's going to get for that story?
She may need a palace to put them all in.
And the Guardian does have it on the front page, doesn't it? Scandal forces the Prince to suspend public duty. So even in that Republican paper, we still see a picture of Prince Andrew.
You do. I mean, they've done their front page. I can see, and we'll discuss, I suppose, later on the political story in Labour's manifesto launch tomorrow. But they put it on the front, and there'll be a lot inside. Their readers want it too. Some people will be reading it if you're a royalist with sorrow. If you're a Republican, you'll be a little bit more gleeful. They're in trouble.
And what about
gleeful? That's an understatement for him.
Well, I wish it wasn't the circumstances where women have been sexploited. He denies any involvement, but you hear and you read and you watch the testimony of those women, and you know Epstein was convicted, and there would be more convictions coming out.
And that was the lack of judgment, wasn't it? It's continuing your association with him after the conviction, which shows perhaps born of arrogance or
He should never have
ignorance
spoken.
or something.
He should have rang that and said, sorry, I can never see you again, speak to you again. He didn't need to go out and see him. He certainly didn't need to spend 4 days saying goodbye.
His house was convenient to stay in. I mean, come on, this is
So
sick.
what about the implications from the US then, where the investigation continues both in terms of civilian action possibly as well? Jeffrey Epstein obviously has killed himself and is no longer around to answer further questions. But what are the implications for Prince Andrew in terms of that?
There are what papers are available, tapes, if any exist. You want to hear from Ghislaine Maxwell, who the former Mirror proprietor, Maxwell's daughter, who was Prince Andrew's friend and introduced him to Epstein. Point, she is gonna have to give her side. Maybe the police will require her to.
Interview? That'd be interesting.
But she denies everything. But nevertheless, she's going to be held to account. If he ever went to the States now, Prince Andrew, chances are he'd be lifted. So it's probably best if he makes through the U.S. Embassy an appointment to be interviewed by the FBI, probably over here.
They would probably come to him.
Yeah, but that in itself for a royal is an incredible move. Would be for any individual. For a royal, woo.
Yes,
Which is another reason why he had to go.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, Prince Andrew, as you can see, pretty much dominating the newspapers. There are other stories as well, impeachment and the election when we come back.